Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world as convoluted and oppressive as a Victorian morning dress, the infamous workhouses of the 19th century. Imagine scullery maids with more chores than a modern-day multitasker on a caffeine high, only with a side of despair and a sprinkle of cheeky rebellion. Before we dive in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this quirky dive into history. I love hearing from you, so drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is. Somehow it's always midnight somewhere, isn't it? Now dim those lights, maybe turn on a fan for that white noise effect and get comfy. Let's take a moment. Have you ever wondered what it was truly like to live inside a Victorian workhouse? What were the secret hand signals for "please no more porridge"? Did they really have a "no fun allowed" sign hanging above the kitchen? How did you cope with the endless chores when the only reward was not being sent to the bad room? What would you trade for just one good night's sleep on a real mattress? And congratulations, you've just woken up in a workhouse in 1845, where every day is an adventure in tedium and good luck trying to find a crumb of dignity. Picture this. It's dawn, and the sun is breaking through the grimy windows, illuminating the faces of the weary souls who've had their sleep interrupted by the shrill whistle of the workhouse master. You roll out of your straw-padded bed that smells faintly of mildew and dreams long gone, wondering if today will finally be the day the porridge doesn't taste like wallpaper paste. Spoiler alert, it won't. You glance around the communal room to see if anyone else is feeling particularly optimistic about breakfast. That hope is quickly dashed when you spot the same empty-eyed expressions staring back at you, resigned to a day of labour and an unwavering loyalty to gruel. As you shuffle to the washroom, a rickety affair that feels more like a horror movie set than a sanctuary for cleanliness, you contemplate the fine art of washing up, with barely a bucketful of tepid water. It's not so much about hygiene as it is about maintaining an illusion of cleanliness, an exercise in futility really, as the workhouse has effectively pressed all semblance of freshness from your skin, and in its place, a delightful fragrance you can only describe as odour sweat and regret. The thrill of splashing your face with cold water is soon overshadowed by the knowledge that you'll be sorting through dirty laundry by noon. You've got the attention span of a rock right now, and that's just to brush your hair, which, truth be told, hasn't seen a comb for at least 2 weeks. You take stock of the day ahead, mentally laying out a game plan to survive the relentless cycle of labour that is at best an endurance test, and at worst, an insufferable marathon. Ever wonder if they actually have a trophy for surviving another day? You chuckle at the thought of yourself holding a dilapidated award reading. Congratulations! You're now 1 day older and still in the workhouse. Finally mustering the energy to face the day, you head down the creaky staircase. Its protests sound like a Shakespearean ghost wailing for justice. The kitchen, more of a cauldron of misfortune than a place for meal prep, greets you with that familiar bubbling sound of yesterday's porridge, now an unappetizing grey mass with the consistency of something you'd paint a house with. You wonder how it's possible for food to simultaneously look unappealing and smell like a bad decision. Breakfast becomes a bleak ritual of spooning questionable sludge into your bowl, a saccharine game of guess what protein was in there, as you sit down with your wooden spoon, a prized possession that probably doubles as a future weapon in case dinner gets rowdy. You scan the table for some sign of life among your fellow inmates. Some are engaged in awe-inspiring acts of breakfast negotiation, attempting to barter a spoonful of salt for a tiny morsel they heard rumour of, perhaps even a bit of sugar. You can't help but snicker under your breath at how fragile their dreams seem, held together by the same flimsy structure of yesterday's hopes. Lifted by camaraderie and the faint hope that the morning might lift your spirits, you engage in a conversation about what you all dreamt of last night. Was it castles, lush gardens, lice-free hair? Conversations weave their way through the cool air, offering a brief respite from the cold reality of workhouses. But, like all beautiful things, this banter is short-lived. The ominous bellow of the master echoes through the halls like an unwanted alarm clock, reminding you that dreamland is now firmly behind you and labour awaits. With bowl scraped clean and spirit slightly lifted, you and your comrades gather for the infamous morning formation, a line-up of willing bodies needed to tend to the endless chores waiting for all of you. Picture it. A regimented line-up stretching across an uneven floor, bracing yourselves against the impending waves of work that will turn even the heartiest soul into a mere shadow by sundown. But among the tedious tasks and the heaviness of despair, there lies the slimmest possibility of joy. A promise that laughter can still be forged from the most grinding struggles. Yes, living in a workhouse may feel like running uphill in a snowstorm while juggling a sack of rocks, but it's also about finding resilience in the shared glances, the quick jokes, and the unbreakable spirit of survival. You rally your fellow mates for another day of chores, marching off like an absurdly bruised band of soldiers heading into battle, fighting the good fight against workhouse monotony. Welcome to the vibrant and pitiful roller coaster of life in a Victorian workhouse, where dreams collide with reality and every morning is a battle of grit. So grab your rickety broom, prepare for another day of endless chores, and hold on to hope like a child clinging to the last piece of candy. They're both in short supply, but sweet, fantastical treasures worth holding on to. Breakfast in the workhouse is an experience all on its own. You stand in line with a motley crew of equally forlorn faces, waiting for what can only be described as a thick grey sludge that resembles the remnants of a failed science experiment. It's like eating glue, only less exciting. Still you chow down because, well, it's breakfast, your only chance at sustenance until the clock strikes 12, if you're lucky. As you take your sludgy portion, an actual science experiment in culinary disappointment, you can't help but wonder what exactly the workhouse staff has done to this glorified porridge. Is it even real food, or just a creative arrangement of yesterday's leftovers and a heavy sprinkling of despair? Some conspirators in the line become culinary detectives, sniffing peculiar scents that may as well be evidence for an episode of a history-themed crime show. After all, what you're consuming could either be breakfast or a secret plot to induce madness. With your bowl in hand, you settle down at a rickety wooden table alongside your fellow inmates for this morning's dining experience. As the spoon approaches your mouth, you prepare for the taste test of a lifetime. Will it be more gooey than flavourful? Will there be a mysterious crunch? Perhaps a bit of hay still lingering from the earlier straw miscibility situation? But at this point, you're too hungry to care. Every spoonful is a grim reminder of your status as an inhabitant of the workhouse universe. Sometimes, to liven up the gloom, a fellow inmate will regale everyone with tales of their previous culinary escapades beyond the walls. Flashes of fish and chips, roast dinners, or even a whiff of fresh bread feel like passionate folklore passed down through generations, all while you're left tasting the dreams of culinary joys unattainable to workhouse residents. In this moment, for some, the porridge transforms into a veritable banquet of memory and longing. They taste only the dishes of gratitude and neglect. As you finish your bowl, there's a fleeting moment of contentment that tricks itself into feeling real. You realise, however, that this very cheeriness smacks of optimism familiar to tragic heroes in sad plays. The kitchen staff is looming nearby, appraising the dining room like a hawk ready to swoop in on the next victim whose spoon has dared stray too near the empty bowl of destiny. With a quick poke at the left cheek, you shove back any hopes of correlation between a mirage and a full stomach. That moment of fleeting happiness, curdled by the thought of the clock ticking toward your next grueling shift, reminds you just how fragile your existence is. Suddenly your escape becomes critical. You utter silent mantras to summon willpower for labour as the next scullery task awaits. You take stock of the perspective that what you've eaten isn't just a thirst for meals, it's the essence of survival, even if what you're surviving is criminally banal. When lunch creeps round again, the workhouse cooks seem to draw dramatically from the decisions made out of sheer mismanagement. Other adults might dream of perfectly baked bread loaves slathered with butter, but for you, lunch means more of the same four-letter word: porridge. You might even contemplate a career choice related to drafting a better porridge recipe in the distant future, perhaps starring in a new series called Filler Food for Forsaken Folk. As the day unfolds, the former thrill of breakfast has morphed into something resembling a ritual. That moment when you surrender yourself to yet another bowl of grey, mushy, life-affirming gruel. But here's the kicker. Over time, it becomes less about the food and more about boycotting inevitable boredom. You and your workhouse compatriots form a support group of sorts. This Porridge Appreciation Society, dedicated to enduring the worst culinary moments while dreaming of nutritious meals sprinkled with decadence. So, you gather around the table, spoons raised high in mock toast, a collective rebellion against the monotony of existence within these damp, dreary walls. Chewed and swallowed dreams blend with the grisly reality you face daily, making it all a delicate souffle of resilience. And perhaps, just maybe, if you squint hard enough, the porridge looks less like a prison meal and more like the cornerstone of camaraderie forged from shared adversity. In the end, it's just porridge, but it's your porridge, served with a side of unintentional humour and a splash of stubborn hope. As you wipe the remnants of that grey concoction from your lips, you remind yourself, one day you might just awaken in a world where breakfast isn't a battle, where sustenance elevates joy rather than trivialising it. For now, you'll just have to keep dreaming, even if your dreams taste a little like yesterday's slop. After braving the breakfast ordeal, it's time to get dressed. You rummage through your wardrobe, if you could still call it that, a heap of scratchy fabrics that feel like they were harvested from the last tumbleweed left in the desert. You're not just outfitted in rags, you're layered in memories of someone else's bad choices and questionable laundry habits. As you sift through the precarious pile, you catch a whiff of something that suspiciously resembles history's terrible mistakes mixed with a hint of despair. Is that mothballs, or just the ghost of your dignity perishing right before your eyes? Grabbing the least offensive garment, a woolen tunic that proudly showcases a variety of questionable stains, you encounter the dual challenges of putting it on and maintaining your sense of self-worth. This may very well be the longest half-shirt you've ever tried to fit into, and not out of desire. The mortal fear that not doing so could lead to an embarrassing scene where everyone points and exclaims, "Is that the ghost of breakfast past clinging to your collar?" While you wrangle the tunic onto your torso, you can't help but contemplate your once-cherished dream of fashion stardom. The only runways you're gracing now are the creaky floorboards of the workhouse, and your only audience is a yard full of disdainful looks. As you fumble with the fabric, your thoughts wander to the fashion choices of the rich. Have they ever considered the joy of rags? Imagine parading about in the glory of patched-up cotton, sprouting a style that screams, "I once survived a flooding disaster." After all, those assorted rags were once someone's Sunday best, prone to be dressed up and paraded around town like a trophy, before it turned into a potato sack and crawled sideways into the workhouse. Stepping into your shoes, if they can even be called that, truly challenges your idea of comfort. You manage to slip on a pair of leather remnants that resemble something a medieval warrior might stomp around in after tripping over a hedge. Fabulous, you think, feeling ready to take on Fashion Week until you realise these aren't just shoes. They're a veritable minefield of potential blisters. It's remarkably impressive how a simple walk around the workhouse can suddenly feel like an uphill sprint through mud while wearing weights. Now dressed in your garments of misery, you shuffle out to join your comrades. There's a communal shuffle, a herd of the downtrodden sizing each other up. You glance at their outfits and realise you haven't truly embraced fashion until you've donned the self-proclaimed rags of resilience. Look, it's not that your fellow inmates are terrible at dressing. It's just that they too seem to have received wardrobe hand-me-downs from Halloween past. Speaking of hand-me-downs, did you know that some of your fellow workhouse inmates have made it their mission to exchange tips on rag renewals? Why wear out when you can wear on, they say, while proudly displaying their latest DIY upgrades, each version more outrageous than the last. One enterprising soul has fashioned a handbag out of a previous year's porridge leftovers. Rather, those mysterious brown blotches covering their solar modesty could very well pass for haute couture if you squint hard enough. As you walk through these drafty corridors, you can't help but overhear debates about the future of workhouse fashion. Will rags ever go mainstream, they ponder? Are they a temporary fix or a long-term lifestyle? You chuckle softly at the thought. Life in the workhouse is a statement piece that says, "Welcome to my suffering, but with style." And who could argue against that kind of optimism? But there's more to this garment of misery than mere fabric. It's a badge of survival, resilience moulded into every thread sewn with the wisdom of the ages. Your rags may never grace the glossy pages of a fashion magazine, but they tell stories that high silk cannot convey, stories of endurance, laughter, and camaraderie birthed from shared experiences, where every tear is a reminder of triumph over distress. And as you pull your clothes taut against your frame, you think, maybe you're not just wearing misery. Perhaps you're sporting radiant resilience, an outfit crafted in the power of the human spirit. So, dressed in clothes that would make the fashion police swoon, you march into the day with a hearty resolve, embracing your struggle like a catwalk model strutting down the runway of a long-forgotten dream. Nature calls, loudly, and you realise just how little privacy means in this place. The facilities are less of a sanctuary and more of a regrettable experience. You line up with a queue of fellow inmates for what can only be described as a wooden seat over a pit. You place bets on which unfortunate soul will draw the short straw of cleaning duty today. Spoiler alert, it's you. As you shuffle forward, the gentle stench wafts in your direction, an olfactory assault that seems like it's been brewing since the dawn of time, or at least since the last medieval fair that somehow got mixed up with this delightful workhouse. Once it's finally your turn, you take a deep breath, half of it regretting the choices that led you here. You glance nervously at the wooden seat, which creaks ominously under the weight of too many desperate behinds. Privacy? What's that? In the workhouse, the concept of personal space is as imaginary as a unicorn in a top hat. Instead, you've got a motley crew of lamenting souls just a few feet away, all pretending to be engrossed in deep philosophical discussions regarding the nature of despair, otherwise known as weekend chit-chat by the chamber pots. As you gingerly acclimate to your temporary throne, you can't help but notice the bustling activity just outside. A field of shrieking children plays gallows with dirt-stumped feet, their laughter mingling with the sounds of labour. You try to focus, reminding yourself that nobody wants to lean over a pit of despair. But it's incredibly hard to maintain your zen when you can hear someone recounting an embarrassing skirmish with a rogue pigeon over yesterday's lunch. With barely a moment to relax and vividly aware of the half-dozen or so other eyes watching, you brace yourself. While the world outside continues chugging along, complete with the plights of real human joy, you muster the strength to take care of business. In a split second, the connection between you and your deepest thoughts, those about a great escape, perhaps involving a dramatic leap over the walls, vanishes as fast as your dignity down this pit of doom. You think to yourself, wow, I might actually prefer a dragon's fiery breath to this. When you finally emerge victorious, or at least lighter in body, though not spirit, you step back into the grimy light of the main workhouse area. The relief floods through you, albeit short-lived. Enter the reality of the communal bucket brigade. You need to tackle cleaning duties. There's no easy route here. Sifting through the past is optional, but cleaning up this mess, not so much. Armed only with a tattered cloth and a wooden spoon that's seen better days, you dive in, struggling to avoid direct eye contact with the enthusiastic resident rat, who seems far too invested in the arrangement of refuse. You scrub out the ceremonial bucket. Once it's clean, you wave goodbye to any last shreds of dignity as you dump the contents, daringly outside. Amongst the townsfolk, you wonder if the ancient deity of muck found it amusing. It's almost as if there's a kickback system going on. Today is your chance to redeem yourself, whispers your inner monologue. If you think championship worth could be earned through less than glamorous methods, good luck with that. An unsettling realization washes over you, much like the bucket's contents. You might be spending a significant portion of your life investing in the saving grace of chamber duties, rather than passage toward ultimate freedom. And as you sit in a corner, ruminating and wondering how other escapees made it out, stand-up comedians continuously walk in and out of your uninvited thoughts, reminding you humour is the only way to survive this vaudeville act. As evening darkness wraps itself around the workhouse, the dreaded task of toilet duty relentlessly waits to be completed again. You plop down next to the well-worn bucket of discussions, realising it's less about feeling the deck of muck it out and more about sharing tales of terror, as absurd as they may be, to keep sanity. Perhaps if you laugh, watch others slip, or slip yourself, you might just withstand this eternal struggle. At day's end, life in the workhouse has brought new meaning to you. As the sun finally dips beneath the veil of splitting clouds, you sit on that ever-splintering seat, hand-stitched stories turned comically honest, and armed with the knowledge that while there is little dignity, there still lies camaraderie in the shared awkwardness of toil and sadness. In a world that feels barren, you find pockets of humour beneath the seats of despair, and somehow, against all odds, you see that each flush is just another chance to dream your way out. A rather gross metaphor for liberation, you agree. For tomorrow, surely, the smell will not cling to your skin. Reluctant to linger in the smelly lavatory, you shuffle back inside where the real fun begins. It's time to tackle the workhouse chores, the duty list that seems to have been penned by a sadistic version of Santa Claus. Scrubbing the floors? Check. Emptying chamber pots? Double check. And somehow, you're still expected to do this all with a smile while dodging the master's glare and hoping for a fleeting moment of reprieve. As you peer at the endless list of tasks, you can almost hear the sounds of yesteryear. A chilling symphony of groans from overworked souls echoing off the damp walls. The floorboards creak under your feet, like they've weathered centuries of indignities, and as you plunge a scrub brush into a bucket of water, you brace for the inevitable flood of reality. This water smells worse than your neighbour's last meal, and guess what? It's going to be used not for cleaning, but for erasing the evidence of other people's filth. Armed with a bucket and a cloth that feels remarkably like a scrap torn from yesterday's laundry, you plunge into the morning's first project, scrubbing the workroom floor. It's a tedious task that seems to take forever. The water turns a lovely shade of midlife crisis grey while your knees threaten a mutiny. Every stroke of the brush begs the question, how is it possible for a floor this dirty to have survived 100 years without being replaced by a nice hardwood? You channel all of your resentment into the bristles as the ghosts of the previous occupants cheer you on. Next up on the to-do list, chamber pots. Yes, those lovable relics of the quotidian, every bit as unromantic as they sound. You take a deep breath and grab one with a firm grip that says, "This will not conquer me." The contents are, well, let's just say that calling them unique would be underselling it. You contemplate the length to which humans will go to avoid making eye contact with a toilet for fear of immediate judgment. After a half-hearted attempt to hold your breath, you sling the contents onto the workhouse grounds like an Olympic javelin thrower, if javelins were filled with the remnants of yesterday's stews. Admittedly, you feel a slight rush. It's disgusting but uniquely liberating in that I might get cholera, but at least I'm not dealing with this anymore kind of way. After manoeuvring your way through the contents of the chamber pot with the precision of a passageway peasant, you pause for a moment to glance around. Your fellow workhouse companions are undertaking similar grueling tasks, cleaning out live-in fish tanks, chiselling grime off tables, and managing the antics of children who seem more determined to play than help. You wonder, is this what the human spirit looks like under duress? A band of resilient souls united in misery, working together to finish their chore lists as friends and foes, shoulder to shoulder. Next on the agenda is the laundry, the much-feared, seldom-cherished chore. The clothes from the workhouse inhabitants would make a fashion designer weep. You can feel the weight of accumulated grime and sweat, and that pleasant aroma wafting in your direction isn't perfume. It's more like a symphony of odour that hasn't been aired out since last summer. Balancing on a creaky bench that sways under your weight, you begin the artistic endeavour of washing your ragged garments. You fill a tub with water that smells suspiciously like last week's pottage and start scrubbing, questioning the wisdom of doing laundry in a dirty tub while recalling the many life choices that led you to this moment. A laundry basket filled with clothes that have seen things, terrible, wretched, unspeakable things. After lugging around wet clothes, even more wretched than the pots, you trudge back inside. It's practically kitchen duty time now. The basic premise is an all-hands-on-deck approach to meal prep. What's for dinner? Oh, let's just say it's highly likely you'll encounter the same grey sludge that passed for breakfast and lunch. An unexplainable phenomenon, really. One can eat their weight in gruel and still be hungry for something more. It's the lingering hope of a surprise feast that keeps every workhouse compatriot engaged. Maybe today will surprise you. Then comes the part of the day everyone dreads, cleaning up after the meals. Leftovers, more like left-unders, the remnants that linger and stuff up every corner of the scullery. Pans, bowls and utensils sit nestled together as though they're anticipating their fate in some tragic musical about dishwashing. You scrub, rinse and dry, secretly visualising the flamboyant kitchen of a well-to-do family where they feast on lavish banquets while you battle the washing-up demon in the underbelly of society. As the sun begins to set on your 12-hour chore marathon, you retreat back to your corner of the workhouse, exhausted but resolute. Perhaps you didn't escape the day without a few stains, literal and metaphorical, but take solace in the fact that you survived, and so did your spirit. Today, you didn't just check off chores from a haunted to-do list, you also reaffirmed that hope has an amusing habit of showing up at the oddest of times, even amidst the unrelenting drudgery of a Victorian workhouse. Tonight, when you finally settle down into bed, you'll close your eyes and let your bones heal while dreaming of what life might hold outside these brutal walls, and you'll find a perverse satisfaction in knowing tomorrow is just another day of chores, an endless roller coaster of survival. At least you're in it together. As the day stretches on like a particularly stubborn piece of bread dough, you're thrust into the chaos of labour. From sewing rag rugs to breaking your back in the fields, welcome to your new normal. You've become part of a living, breathing assembly line of survival, but without the assembly or the line. Instead, you've got a gaggle of equally beleaguered people just hoping not to trip over a bucket of regret. First up on this delightful odyssey through toil, you find yourself assigned to the Rag Rug Committee. No, this isn't a gang of textile rebels. It's just a group of unfortunate souls given strings to knot and patterns to make, or rather, to lose their minds trying to figure out. Picture this. You're hunched over a half-finished rug that looks less like a work of art and more like a sad animal that could have been a scarf but somehow was not. Each knot is a tiny rebellion against your dreary fate, but most of your concentration is spent fighting off the incessant urge to nap on the wet fabric. And while some people whistle tunes to ignite their creativity, you're just trying to avoid the prickly stares of the taskmaster overseeing it all. After what feels like an eternity trapped in this web of thread and despair, you're summoned to the field for some real labour. Breaking your back ploughing with a rusty tool feels like it was designed by a medieval torture enthusiast. The ground is stubborn, the sun is unforgiving, and your energy is quickly being drained like the last drop of semi-decent ale at a family reunion. You glance around at your fellow labourers, a motley crew of unfortunate souls who all share that look of weary acceptance that could fill an entire art gallery with its authenticity. There's a sense of camaraderie developing, even if it's born from a shared hatred for the hoe and the endless weeds you're currently battling like an inexplicable superhero. As you yank at the dried roots of stubborn plants, it dawns on you. You're more of a weed than a flower in this soil. You could use a good sprouting, a twist of fate, a moment of divine intervention where someone whispers, "You're done for today." Alas, you're left with nothing but dreams of a magical escape, and perhaps a soft basket of freshly baked bread. A workhouse fairy tale that's unlikely to unfold. With your hands stained and your body perpetually sore, you push through lunch, praying that today's dull porridge is a gourmet update. You daydream of running off to the market with that perfect loaf of bread, the blissful escape from monotony. Instead, the workhouse staff has miraculously combined your lunchtime excitement with an extra helping of despair, and you find yourself contemplating a life's worth of choices that somehow led you here, hands still mucked and bare, a little more broken by the day. Post-lunch, it's back to the mind-numbing labour of sewing and scrubbing again, and that thought feels more like an anchor than a reason to breathe. You wind up in the laundry section, surrounded by water that smells as if it has been harvested from the depths of ill decision-making. Your task is to wring out the fabrics with a precision you've been clearly told you lack. With each pinch and twist of the wet cloth, you feel like you're squeezing out the very last hopes of decency this place could provide. Your dreams vanish down the drain, puddling into a congealed mess of worry that resembles yesterday's meal. Sometimes, while washing, you catch snippets of gossip from your fellow inmates. They too share wild dreams of escape, from running off to America to finding hidden treasure stashed under the floorboards. Let's be real, there's more likely to be rats. Conversations of rebellious whispers wound seamlessly through the haze of laundry and duty. The community's simmering desire for autonomy blending like an odd new elixir crafted from exhaustion and the timid inklings of revolution. Maybe, just maybe, there's strength in numbers. As the daylight begins to fade, the double whammy of fatigue and soreness sets in like a reminder of all the unkind choices you allowed destiny to make for you. You step back, looking over the day's tenuous strain of labour. Rags stitched, clothes scrubbed, sweat pooled, feeling a small sense of pride wash over you momentarily like sunlight melting the chill from a long winter's night. You shuffle back to your straw confines, ready to confront the ruthless embrace of a mattress that feels more like a bed of nails than a cushion for your weary bones. Yet tonight, amid the exhaustion, there's a glimmer of something. It's more than just survival. It's the spark of hope, waiting stubbornly to break through like the dawn that marks yet another day in this peculiar existence. With every knot of the rug and every scrub of the clothing, you're swinging into silent rebellion, preparing perhaps for a future that's worth more than just dreams of bread, but dreams of the freedom to truly live. At last the clock strikes noon. You return to the dining area for another round of porridge, now lovingly termed the gruel of despair. You take a moment to mourn the loss of any culinary hope, and reflect on how you might sneak a few crumbs for later, lest betrayal of your stomach tempt you to a daydream about a proper meal. As you shuffle into the austere dining hall, the aroma hits you like a damp wool blanket. Somewhere between wet hay and a bowl of disappointment garnished with a hint of defeat. Everyone gathers round the long wooden tables, faces drawn and expectant, as though this mass of humanity might summon an edible miracle from the depths of the pot. But alas, the towering vat before you is bubbling with something so uninviting, it proves that cheerfully titled menu items should come with a warning. Results may vary, cooking skills not included. You take a ladle and brace yourself for the grey sludge of sameness that awaits. Sure, you can make a hearty case for not wanting leftovers, but this is workhouse dining. The second serving of porridge is like the sequel nobody asked for. Bland, uninspired, and guaranteed to make you re-evaluate your life choices. As the steamy gloop slides onto your hard-worn wooden bowl, you resist the urge to express gratitude for the communal gruel. An odd ritual where misery meets necessity, and you're just hoping every bowl isn't filled to the brim with a week's worth of regret. And pray tell, what a flavour! Perhaps a sprinkle of imaginary salt. Would a dash of desperation work? You glance around to see some fellow inmates mixing it up by adding sugar, a rare and precious commodity you frankly can't afford on your weekly budget. But to them, it's an act of revolution, a daring declaration that they will have a sweetened existence, even if just for the length of a spoonful. You take a tentative first bite, and for a moment you taste nothing. One friend remarks that the porridge is just day-old sadness, while another muses it might be better if they just served it cold. At this point, someone starts plotting ways to secure a secret stash of saltpeter, this week's black market deal in the workhouse, and you can hardly suppress your giggles at the irony of this guerrilla cooking operation against mediocrity. With every reluctant chew, you're faced with the harsh reality of the workhouse diet. Sure, you've heard tales of old grannies crafting secret recipes from treasured family cookbooks, infusing dishes with love and bursting flavours. Here, you're lucky if the only ingredient you identify is mystery grain, which you choose to think of as an homage to the rich history of your esteemed ancestors. Thank goodness for those tales that remind you there's life beyond the gruel, even if it's just a legend told to entertain a child on the brink of hunger-induced madness. And then the whispers start. Talk of tomorrow's cookie heists. It turns out just outside the workhouse walls is a nest of fruit trees that might finally make up for the hogging of culinary rites. There the spirit of revolution floats on the smell of summer ripeness, fanning the flames of creativity as you plot your escape from the gastronomic prison of day-to-day existence. But suddenly, the workhouse master's imposing figure appears, a real-life embodiment of grim reality, flanked by attendants who enforce the laws of the dining hall. You half expect a flourish of a chicken wing or a shoulder of beef to emerge from their uniforms to distract you momentarily, although the only meat you've seen was the vague rumour of a rat incidentally in the porridge last Tuesday. Soon, your luck runs out. The master's voice rings out, dousing even the feeblest sparks of rebellion. No food left behind. Finish your bowls or face the consequences. His gaze cuts across the room, and it's clear. Doctrine won't pardon those who dare to return a partially full bowl. You either last indeterminate lumps like a judge analysing evidence against the accused, knowing full well you have to entertain this feast of fibres one last time. As you swallow down the final remnants of misery, you make another pact with the heavens for tomorrow. You will return to the workhouse, fight through the push of work and chore, and so help you, you'll dream up a plan. One that doesn't hinge solely on the eternal servitude of gruel. And when next lunchtime strikes, well, at least you'll have a full bowl of laughter to spill along with that dry mashed potato. Burping with joyfully bitter irony, you know the headlines would read, "Luncheon at the workhouse, no taste buds were freed." Lunchtime brings with it a universal dilemma. Do you risk sneaking in a nap? Or do you maintain your position at the supervision of the workhouse master? You think loud in your head about your options, a snooze versus the eternal wail of labour. You know there's no winning, only the animals' mutterings of your name as they question your sanity for choosing a path without repose. Just the thought of a brief escape from the clutches of drudgery beckons like a warm blanket on a frost-bitten morning. After all, what could be more divine than collapsing into a heap of straw for a few glorious minutes of unconsciousness? But as you weigh your options, you can already hear the distant clang of the workhouse bell echoing through your skull, reminding you that temptation is the devil's playground, especially in a place where patience and compliance are part of the entrance fee. You glance around at your fellow inmates, each face reflecting the same conflict. Do you nap now and risk missing lunch? Or do you forego sleep and dive into another mound of watery porridge? With grumbling stomachs and weary eyes, it's about as favourable as choosing between signing up for Fate's Comedy Club or the endless lecture on porridge recipes you've heard 87 times. So, you make your choice. To skip the fantasy of napping in favour of ensuring you're not subject to the wrath of the workhouse pig supervisors who'd sooner chew ham than let you slack off. The problem is, you're suddenly all too aware of the reality clinging to your eyelids like crusty bedbugs. Exhaustion creeps in from every corner. You've spent all morning lifting buckets of water, scrubbing floors and contemplating the ethics of whacking the dust out of Eliza's cough when she isn't looking. And somehow, you're meant to have the energy to plod through another grueling shift of labour into the afternoon. You shuffle towards the dining hall ready to reluctantly devour your second helping of porridge that seems to have once known the joy of grains before it inexplicably morphed into this starchy slop. Wouldn't you give anything for a true feast, one backed by spices instead of a faint smell of despair? The faces around you, full of grit and determination, speaking the universal language of keep calm and hoard your bread, seems to summon all the belief you can muster just to stay awake. Once inside the dining hall you sit with fellow labourers, a cast of characters who make published novels jealous of their backstories. Old Pete, with his time-tested belly, is offering sage advice about the virtues of subpar gruel. Anyone who expresses that gruel has virtues deserves a place in the fine history of things you can't make up. Next to him, Betsy, your confidant, dreams of escaping the workhouse with a sewing basket filled with works of absolute wizardry, a cunning plan to barter away her soul before nighttime rolls around. Your mind races. Could crafting become your salvation? Betsy would need to share her secrets, though, or join the ranks of supervised sleep-deprived dreamers. But amid your bustling conversations and raised porridge spoons, the call for afternoon labour pulls you back. Reality feels like a guillotine poised above your head. Back to the grind, the overseer shouts. a flare of disdain punctuating every syllable. You all shamble back to your stations, wrestling with the hunger gnawing at your gut as much as the exhaustion weighing on your mind. It occurs to you that perhaps napping has transformed into a secret underground revolution, a rebellion against the dulcet tones of hard labour. Except there's no need for pitchforks, just straw and a cunning glance. If you were to unite the weary, could the workhouse experience be anything more than dread? Surely comrades united can accomplish more than hand-scrubbing floors. You make the bold decision to seek a reprieve during the upcoming break. And then there's the matter of spirit. How do you retain a morsel of sanity in a place like this? You decide to imagine to yourself, what if you turned the very act of labour into art? An avant-garde installation titled The Endless Grind. But before you conjure up a masterpiece born of drudgery, you realise the workhouse master would have none of it, insisting that even the canvas of your squalor must stay true to the shadows of service. This is workhouse life, a steady stream of irony thicker than the porridge. As the day drags on, and your exhaustion mounts, you find your mind creeping back towards that tempting nap. Perhaps tomorrow you'll dare the depths of that glorious rest, risking the possible wrath of the master as your rebellion finds its rhythm in the struggle for betterment. After all, even workhouse dwellers deserve a dream in their own right. Today the odds are not in your favour, but tomorrow might just be the turning point for tiny rebellions via both heart and the head on a humble pillow of straw. As afternoon temperatures soar, the air becomes thick with humidity, and your frail hope of comfort dissipates like the steam off last week's unwashed linens. Add in the simmering tempers of your fellow labourers, and you can practically feel the collective sigh of your ancestors whispering against the workhouse walls. Sure, they survived, but at what cost? You'll find yourself baking in a communal oven, the scent of sweat lingering thicker than the porridge you had for breakfast. Think of it as nature's way of encouraging you to reconsider your career as a labourer. You glance around at your companions, all of whom appear to be engaging in an unspoken contest of who can produce the most impressive glare of agony. Spoiler alert, everyone's winning. As you drag your feet through the oppressive air, sweat clinging to your skin in a manner reminiscent of an unwanted hug, you wonder if this is what your fellow breadwinners intended when they rallied for freedom for the masses. Somewhere in the back of your mind you make a deal with yourself. If you can just make it through today without losing it, or throwing something at the insufferable workhouse master, you'll treat yourself to an extra helping of tomorrow's not-so-fresh porridge. A noble goal, surely, but as you wipe your brow, visions of buttery bread and someone else's hot meal swim lazily in your mind like chubby ducks gliding across the fateful pond of despair. With every passing minute in this furnace, your mood sinks lower than the failed bread batch from last week. You witness an increasing number of side eyes exchanged among your fellow labourers, suggesting that things might boil over soon. One angry skeptic lets out a guttural growl that would make a bear jealous. Suddenly you're convinced they've mistaken you for someone who might stand for their rights. Oh, if only you had the energy to join in on the whispers of revolt. Instead, you feel like a rubber band pulled taut, wobbling between the fear of punishment and an overwhelming desire for change, like a cat contemplating an inevitable leap from a high surface, but realising its 9 lives are already running low in this environment. You watch as one particularly brave soul, let's call him Edward, decides he's had enough. With a glimmer of madness in his eyes, he stands up, flailing his arms as if trying to shoo away pesky flies, or politely refuse all the work he's too exhausted to complete. "We've been nothing but cogs in a machine made of misery," he cries, his voice cutting through the morose atmosphere like a hot knife through yesterday's scrap meat. You almost rise to cheer, but then remember how poorly such bravado tends to end. Whispers of fear mingle with the promise of courage until it's just a swirl of anxious energy, dissipating as quickly as it appears. But wait, what's this? There's a commotion near the back. It seems a disagreement over portion sizes has erupted into a theatrical display of human emotion that could rival the dramas of Shakespeare, but featuring far more mud and far fewer costumes. Careful not to invoke the watchful eye of the master, you slip closer to the chaos, drawn in like a moth to a flickering flame. Perhaps, just maybe, you'll witness the grand uprising you've idly fantasized about. But amidst the bickering, the tension only tightens, tempers flare, and the threat of open revolt becomes an all-too-real possibility. You begin to wonder if this might be the beginning of something magnificent, or the spark that lights the fuse on a powder keg of chaos. Yet before Edward can gather more than 5 supporters, a terse silence blankets the exuberance of rebellion. In walks the workhouse master, all bluster and scorn, with a gaze that could peel paint off a wall. He glances around, sizing up the deceptively cheerful atmosphere with a smug sense of satisfaction, relishing the power he holds over your miserable souls. In that moment you realise the master possesses the uncanny ability to extinguish any flicker of hope with mere eye contact. And just like that, the magic of mutiny melts away faster than ice on a summer afternoon. Everyone hastily returns to their grim tasks, straightening up and pretending that all is well in this hotbed of suffering. You emerge from the brief flicker of hope revitalised, perhaps realising that rebellion is a marathon, not a sprint, and sometimes the best revolution is to simply survive for one more day. As you collapse at your station, your resolve strengthens. The tide of change is merely postponed, not defeated, and you'll join the ranks of those who persevere, huddled together in the steaming chaos of camaraderie, all the while dreaming of a world more forgiving than the one you inhabit. So, in the sweltering heat of a dreary workhouse afternoon, remember this. Life may be an endless cycle of porridge and labour, but every struggle is a step towards liberation, one day at a time. With hunger gnawing at your stomach, you start dreaming of snacks you'll never have. Suddenly it feels like you're living in a heist movie as you overhear gossip about a supposed snack thief pilfering dried bread scraps. You join in to make wild accusations, reminiscing about the gruel's strong family resemblance to yesterday's batting average as something you'd only wish on your worst enemy. The tension builds as you stand guard over your pottage like it's the world's last chocolate eclair. In the workhouse, breakfast porridge is not just a meal, it's the world's most monotonous survival tool. Just when you think you can finally hold a gruel-free thought, a fellow inmate Yane whispers conspiratorially about a rogue figure rumoured to have stolen the last of last week's rations. Your brain does a somersault at the idea of someone daring enough to disturb the delicate balance of your daily sustenance. Surely the snacks must be elite, maybe only privy to those who have ascended through the ranks of deceitful hunger. You'd think a workhouse would be a bastion of solidarity in hunger, but no. The drama here rivals that of any daytime soap opera. I saw Anne with my own 2 eyes. She was crumbling bread into her tunic like she was stuffing a lucky rabbit's foot. Someone pipes up, ready to spill the beans like their last night's supper. The rumour mill churns out accusations thicker than the porridge itself, and the scent of betrayal wafts through the damp air. You can't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. How low have we stooped when a bit of stale bread is a prized commodity? And you think back to that bucket of gruel, that dull concoction that somehow still drips with the echoes of a heavier days. You wonder if it has betrayed you too. At this point, even a sniff of that precious dry crust feels more alluring than a feast fit for a king. Somehow, the mealtime spectacle of it turns into a whole new performance series. You all begin to play detective, forming a committee to investigate the snacking scandal, holding secret meetings beneath the twisted staircase where the light barely scampers through grimed-up windows. "What if it's not Anne? What if it's old Bob?" someone suggests, eyes wide with horror as you picture him deserting his post as the self-appointed cook and becoming the bread bandit. The mere thought induces giggles. The gravity of your situation disappears for just a breath, like a fleeting bird flapping at your window. Each vicious accusation raises the stakes while reminding you that hunger makes strange bedfellows. The camaraderie is exhilarating, completely nonsensical, yet utterly approachable. You channel the collective angst of a summer's day into wild conspiracies while munching on air, happily indulging in any scrap of imagination that keeps your spirits lifted. "We could throw breadcrumbs to the pigeons and lure the thief out," you propose. Wild, laughter erupts at the thought, echoing within those prison walls, a rebellion through humour. As the day progresses, a plan emerges. You zone in on the idea of creating a decoy, a crumb-filled artifact to lure the snack thief into the open. After all, there's nothing more tempting than a dried piece of half-eaten bread. You gather scraps from your fellow inmates and, through collective conspiracy-fueled inspiration, construct a bread of destiny, hiding it cleverly under an old sack. Maybe you should call it the golden crust of innocence. It has a nice ring to it, after all. When the hour finally arrives, you huddle in the shadows, a riveting drama unfolding as you watch for the cunning snack thief who dares to disrupt the hierarchy of rations. Little do you know, as the innuendos fly, your own stomach becomes an unwilling participant in this theatrical setup. What if none of your theories are true? What if your feelings of solidarity dissolve into the hum of a space where mere morsels equal power? As whispers and laughter fill the air, you find yourself torn between finding the thief or tackling your hunger head-on, with the dulcet tones of revolution rallying you toward action. You set forth on an unexpected adventure, not knowing that the most daring heist of all may just take place within your depths, and hey, stealing a glimpse of unfiltered laughter during all this bitterness is indeed the sweetest rebellion. As night begins to creep in, it's time for the evening chores. Picture it. A line of grim faces armed with buckets and grim determination. You're not just cleaning up, you're engaging in a strategic battle of wills against dirt, despair, and some unidentifiable muck that you're convinced is plotting your demise. As you look around, you see a ragtag crew of fellow workhouse inmates grinding through the motions, each bound by the mutual understanding that this is less about achieving cleanliness and more about survival. After all, when the dust settles, you don't want to be the one left clutching a bucket of despair, do you? The sun dips low on the horizon, and the air fills with a peculiar smell, the unmistakable mix of sweat, graham, and the hint of burnt cabbage from last week's unfortunate stew. With every stroke of your cleaning rag, you silently wonder why you didn't become a professional cat herder instead. You could have had a career filled with soft purrs and fluffy companions, rather than being elbow deep in filthy wash water. Or at least, that's what you tell yourself as the mud squelches beneath your bare feet, adding a new layer of discomfort to your already dreary existence. You grab a bucket and head for the courtyard, dodging a few suspicious puddles that look like they could be part of a science experiment gone very wrong. As you scrub the floor, your arms start to ache. Who knew wielding a mop could feel like arm wrestling a particularly stubborn fence post? The dirt of the day seems to cling to your soul, laughing at every ragged breath while the evening chill wraps around you like a wet blanket. You can hear whispers of camaraderie from your fellow inmates as laughs punctuate the silence with the promise of rebellion. "Do you think they'll ever let us have a dance party?" one exclaims, wielding his broom as if it were a dance partner. Your mind wanders back to the food rations, and for a moment you float in dreamy thoughts of a lavish feast, heavenly roast meats, fluffy buttery rolls, and a desert of chocolate pudding. Alas, your swirling fantasies are broken by the reappearance of a dreaded voice, less chatter, more cleaning. It's the workhouse master, a formidable presence that casts a shadow longer than the waning light. As he barks his orders, you couldn't help but roll your eyes ever so slightly. Have you ever tried scrubbing the floor while juggling your dreams of freedom? It's like trying to push a cow up a hill, exhausting and fruitless. While others labour beside you, a casual game of longing glances is exchanged. You share the same wistful dream of escape, fantasising about ditching this labour camp for an adventure somewhere sunny with no buckets in sight. You complain to no one in particular. "If I do this chore well enough, will I magically wake up on a sandy beach sipping coconut water?" You half expect the universe to grant your wish. Instead, you're met with another splash of murky water, the workhouse equivalent of a cosmic slap in the face. As the shadows grow longer and the air turns colder, the oven of the kitchen provides some warmth, though it also pumps out cloud-like aromas of the day's leftover gruel that brings nostalgia for those early morning meals, and by nostalgia you mean sickening regret. Still, you persevere, because working together means an evening of laughter, bonding over shared misery, and regaling one another with stories of what life might look like outside these walls. Just as fatigue begins to gnaw at the edges of your spirit, a spectacular, thunderous crash resonates off the damp walls of the workhouse. "What was that?" echoes around the room, followed by a chorus of gasps and nervous laughter. Was it a ghost? An impending rebellion? The sound of a particularly high-spirited rat flinging itself out the window? Your mind races with visions of port wine and dancing in the parlours, while the spirit of freedom sings dire straits in your head. In one horrifying moment, you can almost imagine the workhouse walls collapsing, buried under the weight of broken promises. Finishing for the night, you survey the results of your battle. The floor is reluctantly cleaner than when you started. You find a measure of solace knowing at least the muck is put in its place for now. As you begin to realise that survival, community, and humour begets resilience, you feel the flicker of hope you stowed away so far beneath your daily drudgery. With one final heave and hearty laugh in the face of despair, you know whatever awaits tomorrow, this lives on in you. After all, you're not just surviving, you're thrumming with a life beneath the weight of these chores, and perhaps, just maybe, you're ready to reclaim that dream of freedom. If you thought scrubbing floors was a workout, wait until you see laundry day. Welcome to the ancient torture method of beating away dirt with a rock. Welcome to the fashion faux pas collection of cleanliness, where the notion of fabric care is a luxury no one can afford or even remember. You might think laundry day would involve some sort of pleasant soak and scrub, but in the workhouse, it's less Downton Abbey and more Survivor, laundry edition. First, you gather your fellow inmates, each of you with clothes that seem to have been worn since the invention of cotton. You bring your fancy outfits, which for you includes a sack that, remarkably, has seen better days. As you hold it up, you're reminded that this lump of cloth was once a colour, probably a cheerful blue or joyful yellow, but now resembles the muddy aftermath of a riverbank picnic gone awry. Any hope of stylish cleanliness is utterly squashed by the reality that you're in a workhouse, not a runway. The sounds of grumbling bellies fill the air as you make your way to the laundry area, which, as it turns out, is just a large basin carved out of stone, undoubtedly a prime real estate transaction for the workhouse architect. You've got cold water, which, on the bright side, is less likely to be teeming with mystery bacteria than what other workers are sipping in the kitchens. Still, it's not exactly inviting. Kinda like jumping into a pool that smells suspiciously of old socks. Next comes the equipment, a beater, which is less of a tool and more of an instrument of medieval punishment. You're holding a hefty rock, because of course, modern conveniences like washing machines don't exist. Each beat against that poor beleaguered cloth feels like you're waging war on a very calm and peaceful inanimate object. Every swing is met with your own mental narration, like you're auditioning for a role in an ancient Greek tragedy. Alas, I strike thee, foul stains of grease. As you attack your laundry with the ferocity of a caffeinated grizzly bear, you can practically hear your fellow workhouse inmates grumbling as they too lift their rocks and join in the symphony of scrubbing fury. It's a cacophony of disappointment, punctuated by the occasional laughter of someone discovering that even rippling laundry can't mask the stench of hard labour and despair. Look at us! The avant-garde art exhibit on how not to do laundry, one shouts, barely containing laughter, as a fellow inmate's clothes get caught on the edge of the basin and tumble back in. A splash zone warning might have been helpful. Days of dirt transform into a test of endurance as the hours pass. Your calloused hands throb, and your back aches with the hostilities of the stone. You push through, grinding your teeth with every hit, secretly hoping that the suds of your efforts will produce at least a hint of cleanliness. Spoiler alert, you're still probably going to walk away, smelling like a grumpy goat. Now what do you do with your clean clothes? You hang them on a rickety line stretched across the courtyard, admiring the artistic way the fabric seems to droop in sheer defiance. No fashion magazine in the world would dare to showcase such a collection, except maybe an ironic one that specialises in workhouse chic. While robes flap in the wind like banners of a disgruntled revolution, there's no time to ponder the bitter absurdities of life in the workhouse. You know that another round of chores looms on the horizon, dinner prep, sweeping, and of course, more of that ungrateful porridge. You can almost hear the clock ticking down to the next bout of soul-crushing tasks that will fill your days and sap your imagination faster than your laundry daydreams of revival. But in the midst of all this, as you gaze at the lines hanging with your victory that feels cooler than any modern outfit, there's a thread of camaraderie weaving through the process. It's not just about your clothes. It's the shared understanding and collective sighs, the united struggle against what this workhouse denotes. Literally everyone around you is in the same boat, on rough waters, missing a hull. And perhaps laundry doesn't need to be just a dreary chore. It could be a bonding ritual or a fleeting hint of what it means to struggle together, in a sing-song sort of way. One day you might look back and remember the dramatic battles against dirt and despair as part of the folklore of survival. So slap that rock down and give it another go, because you won't just scrub away stains, you'll also be knitting a narrative, one haphazard piece of cloth at a time. As you settle in for yet another round of dinner, you brace yourself for porridge 3. No surprise twists here, but the kitchen serves it cold for added authenticity. You can practically hear the workhouse's ghost whispering about the sweet potato pie you'll never taste. Thank you very much. The spoon in your hand feels like an instrument of torture as you stare into the bowl, a grey mass that resembles soup left out at a particularly uninspired family reunion. However, you forge on, reminding yourself that this will be the last time you endure such culinary betrayal, until breakfast rolls around again, of course. As you take a cautious bite, A wave of nostalgia washes over you, not for the taste, but for the fantasies of gourmet feasts that dance around your mind like a group of rabid raccoons at a trash can. What if you were seated at a lavish banquet table, surrounded by plates laden with roast ducks, steaming pies, and candied fruits? You snap back to reality as the cold porridge sticks unceremoniously to the back of your throat, tasting vaguely like a combination of yesterday's dreams and cold disappointment. The locals gather around their plates like forlorn vultures, gripping their utensils with a mix of resignation and determination. You can hear them mutter amongst each other about the miraculous bread that won't kill you. A real novelty in this establishment. It's actually a dry chunk of plywood disguised as a loaf, armed with the potential to double as an offensive weapon in case of an emergency. Forget training for the winter. You'd be better off training to catch the local neighbourhood dog that keeps sneaking off with your porridge. Every meal feels like an intense survival game, and you can't decide if you're participating in a communal feast or a comedic punishment ceremony. You glance at the master, impeccably positioned at the end of the long wooden table, looking at you with what can only be described as thinly veiled amusement. It's the same expression a teacher wears while watching a student recount the classic, "My dog ate my homework" excuse, the kind that suggests he knows full well that the dog's an imaginary friend. As you chew slowly, pondering how you're officially trapped in a never-ending loop of sad meals, the ghosts of prior dinners come hovering through the fog of your mind. Memories of earlier porridge iterations, porridge wine the original, porridge 2, the with a twist version featuring a hint of extra despair, mingle with your current suffering. You can already picture the catchy cookbook title, Meals from the Workhouse, a study in regret and resilience. Transforming the eternal porridge into literary artistry might even be your calling. The sounds of slurping and the occasional horrified gasp over a surprise rat's tail punctuate the morose dining atmosphere. A joke exchanged about past meals makes its rounds, gradually growing funnier with each retelling, as if the sheer absurdity of your collective plight offers a spark of warmth during this dreary digestion time. At that moment, the bonds of camaraderie solidify as your fellow inmates bravely share their takes. You reminisce about Sally's infamous, "I dropped my spoon in the porridge and it came back covered in, well, let's just say it's a good thing we don't eat in the dark" story. Laughter bubbles, mixing with the cold porridge that still tastes like yesterday's lottery ticket. But just as laughter fills your spirit with warmth, the evening meal wraps up, faster than that last bite of food can settle in your stomach. You prepare to move on to the next task at hand, cleaning the dining area. The plates and utensils easily transform into a meticulous game of Tetris, nested among bolts of fabric and the remnants of what you're certain was once a dessert. Maybe, if you squinted hard enough. Those still lingering dreams of sweet potato pie float about your mind, taunting you like fickle spectres. With each plate you scrub, a mixture of triumph and defiance rises within you. Perhaps this cycle of mealtime misery is merely fuel for thoughts of a better tomorrow. A thought that exists at the furthest reaches of your mind, shining like a stubborn star in a cloudy night sky. You remind yourself that every grim bowl of porridge isn't the end, but merely an absurd step in an epic tale. The chronicles of cold porridge and what follows. Finally, as you finish your last duties for the day and crawl back into bed, mind swirling with dreams of sweetness, your head hits the straw-stuffed pillow. It's time to rest for yet another riveting installment of the Workhouse Chronicles, knowing the next morning you'll face porridge Theor, what might have been. But until then, a curious sense of hope stirs just beneath the surface, ready to burst forth when your next meal of blandness strikes, or perhaps the sweet dreams of escape will come first. As you stumble through meals and chores, you start realizing something beautiful. you're not alone. Fellow inmates begin sharing stories, spontaneous laughter, and the unmistakable bond of surviving the absurdity of your existence together. Who knew misery could be the secret recipe for friendship? As you peel back the layers of uniform despair, you find that this ragtag bunch is more than fellow labourers. They are your chosen companions in this crucible of existence. In here, every day is less about survival and more about crafting that unique blend of camaraderie that only forms between people who've been through the galaxy's most cringeworthy trials together. Picture this. You and your workmates huddled around a table that's far more worn than a well-loved puppy. Each of you is exchanging snippets of your life stories, laced with the kind of humour that dances on the precipice of tragedy. One fellow labourer, let's call him Tom, has a knack for spinning the most outrageous tales. He recounts how he once fought off a gang of rats that invaded the pantry, using a heavy spoon as his makeshift sword. A noble knight of the gruel-drenched realm you all call home. You can hear the raucous laughter echoing through the sterile walls like a rebellious symphony, reminding you that even here, humour can rise from the ashes of endless porridge. Then there's Mary, who often leads the discussions on the bizarre workings of the workhouse with an air of sarcasm that could turn a rotten potato into a gourmet delicacy. "At least we know we won't starve in here," she says with a wink, her voice dripping with dry wit. I mean, who else would dare to serve a feast of grey mush 3 times a day? Her flair for theatricality makes you feel like you're on stage in the grand opera of workhouse life, where everyone is obligated to perform their roles perfectly, despite the decidedly subpar script. You gather round during your brief moments of reprieve, sharing dreams for 50 years down the road when you might be drinking tea, cosily wrapped in blankets and recounting these wild tales to your grandchildren. Maybe you'll even boast about how that one time, instead of subsisting off cold porridge and gossip, you dared to dream of a chicken casserole with actual chunks of chicken in it. It's the little things that keep your spirits afloat, even in a place where hope often seems like an absent ghost. As the laughter dies down, a palpable sense of understanding fills the air. Everyone has their own burden to bear, whether it's a past riddled with poverty, family pain, or that one ambitious uncle who decided to run away to the circus and never returned. Sharing these experiences transforms you from just inmates into a support group, dysfunctional yet essential, much like a family reunion minus the years of emotional build-up. During chore time, you'll often catch snippets of advice from those around you, transforming mundane tasks into obscure workshops for survival skills. "Tom, you need to scrub deep, or the grime will just circle back to haunt you," someone jokes, and the laughter springs forth like water from a cracked pipe. No matter how many times you find yourself wishing for a day off from scrubbing floors, deep down you know that these relationships are ballasts of light in a sea of darkness. It's amazing how bonds can form so quickly in such a place, a common cause feeding camaraderie. You become adept at reading one another's expressions. A shared look of exasperation can spiral into an entire discussion about how the master's spectacles are worth more than your combined yearly salaries. From whispered protests to barbed critiques of your working conditions, every exchange weaves you closer together, tightening the social fabric of your little makeshift family in the workhouse. But let's not forget that undercurrents of competition always swirl beneath you like the never-ending porridge. Perhaps someone is angling for an extra crumb or a snippet of butter that feels more valuable than gold. Each day feels like a balancing act, fractured communities on the brink of fracture, yet miraculously, it finds a way to hold together, if only because nobody possesses sufficient energy to start an all-out coup. By the time night falls and the darkness creeps through the barred windows, you find comfort in knowing that while the workhouse may be filled with squalor and suffering, it's also a breeding ground for laughter, shared stories, and beautiful friendships. Here, In this land of grey, your spirits uplift one another like the strongest of lifelines, and for every ounce of sorrow, you've gained an immense amount of solidarity. After all, if you're going to forge your way through a life of grime, it might as well be with a merry band of misfits, and in a workhouse, misfits rule the roost. After a long day, the workhouse finally quiets, and everyone gathers for a moment to engage in conversations filled with dreams of escape, be it in a fantastical world of opulence or on a cosy couch with a well-worn book. Little do they know that burr under the tension of their skins, submitted through the years of labour and longing, will continue to hum. Surrounded by the scent of unwashed bodies and cold porridge, you lean against the rough wooden wall, listening to the hushed tones of fellow workers spinning tales of glories unattainable and adventures never embarked upon. In this dimly lit corner of scrambled lives, the air brims with hopes that feel both heavy and deliciously light, like that first lick of ice cream on a hot summer's day, just before the brain freeze hits. One fellow inmate, a wiry man with a beard patched from years of scraping by, launches into a vivid description of a land across the great seas, where the air smells like lemons and every tree is a cotton candy bush. He insists that the streets are paved with warmth and laughter, and every window offers a view of a never-ending carnival. As he gesticulates wildly, you can't help but picture an alien landscape where the mundane porridge transforms into feasts of roast goose and rich chocolate cakes, the very luxury that haunts your imagination. There's an unspoken agreement among you all. A fantasy is safer to share than the dreariness of your current reality. Besides, sharing dreams feels like a quiet act of rebellion, a flicker of light against the oppressive grey that threatens to engulf you. But the laughter doesn't come easily. There's a deep-rooted irony that gnaws at the edges of your conversations. You can almost visualise the walls around you leaning in, eavesdropping on every declaration of desire and every longing look into that brighter future. But who could blame them? You've all become masters of the craft of dreaming after all. Someone mentions a tale of dancing on golden floors, whirling away from the drudgery that seals you in place. It sounds absurd, like going to the moon on a paper airplane, but the collective sigh that fills the room says it all. It's all they have and perhaps all they ever want. You sigh along, nodding as the tales develop, adding your own embellishments about sunlit gardens and fountains that flow with lemonade instead of the usual murky waters you endure each day. As the laughter rises and falls like the waves of a distant ocean, you start pondering what life could have been like in a place where dignity isn't a luxury, where you might not have to share your biscuits with a family of cockroaches residing in your sock drawer. What would it feel like to grow old in a room filled with a light, rather than the shadows that seem to curl around you like unwanted vines? But every time you approach that thought, it feels like trying to hold smoke in your hands, impossible and frustratingly ephemeral. A couple of younger women, their voices exuding that dangerously naive confidence you so envy, start to weave tales featuring dragons and daring knights. You chuckle softly at their exuberance, imagining a pair of heroic figures fending off hordes of workhouse officials, wielding brooms like swords across the squalid battlefield of straw and dust. Oh, how you wish to join them in that battle. Freedom in trade for the mundane chaos of daily chores. As the night deepens, you become acutely aware of the aching reality lying just beneath the surface of your camaraderie. Conversations begin to taper off into sporadic coughing, yawns, and the inevitable shuffle of bodies seeking comfort in the unforgiving beds of straw, tucked into corners of unrecognised homes. There's a lingering sadness, like a bittersweet melody playing in the background. Life moves on, Dreams are left behind like scattered leaves, and tomorrow the grind will begin again. In the soft whispers of night, the workhouse feels a little less like a cage and a little more like a sanctuary for bold imaginations and wistful thinking. You lie in your makeshift bed, allowing the tales of adventure and exploration to dance around your head, mixed with silent prayers for something better. You might wake tomorrow to the usual round of chores, but tonight, when you close your eyes, you're still that dragon-slaying knight sitting atop the castle gates, overlooking a kingdom you hope one day will become a reality. And for that moment, you find a spark of warmth in the cold embrace of night, a flicker of hope that glows brightly against the workhouse's looming shadows. As you prepare to climb into bed on a mattress stuffed with straw and despair, sleep teeters on the edge of your consciousness, daring you to tumble over willfully. You can almost taste the relief, but wait, was that a rat? A peculiar bedtime story unfolds amidst scratching noises, shuffles, and whispered mischief. Ah yes, sleep in the workhouse. A concept so elusive it's like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands. Despite the exhaustion from a day of grueling labour, you lie there in the darkness, unable to shake the feeling that your bed is more of a compost heap than a resting place. Let's paint the scene. Your mattress may be stuffed with straw, but it has also got a solid layer of regrets, nightmares, and who knows what else. The bedding is less about comfort and more about survival, a testament to the countless souls who've shared this very space but left an indelible mark on the fibres. If you squint your eyes while replaying the day in your mind, you could almost convince yourself that your spot has absorbed the sweat and tears of all those who came before you. Talk about inheritance, and as the moonlight sneaks in through the cracks in the walls like a nosy relative, you start hearing the symphony of workhouse life's night shift. Rustlings, squeaks, and the occasional thud that makes you wonder if your neighbours are trying to engage in acrobatics or if the spirit of rebellion is running loose inside the hallowed halls of toil. You picture a rogue rat performing circus tricks, dodging the uneven, creaky floorboards in a desperate dance of survival. Ah, the nightly entertainment, you mutter to yourself with a smirk. Behold the talented rodent. With sleep dancing just beyond your reach, your mind starts to wander into the abyss of thoughts that are decidedly not conducive to rest. You begin to think about your morning. Would there be enough porridge to go around? Would you survive another day of scolding from the matron? And why on earth did you put your hand in that suspicious pot earlier? If you can somehow survive the night's barrages of mouse biology and existential dread, maybe, just maybe, you can face the day ahead. And just like that, you realise that not even the creatures of the night have it easy. You picture a family of rats, perhaps contemplating their own survival in a world filled with dangers, cats, sticky traps, and angry workhouse residents with foreboding brooms. It's a legitimate rat race out there, and you're just a spectator. Finally, after what feels like hours of battling with your thoughts, your eyelids begin to feel like weights attached by chains forged in the mill of exhaustion. You bury your head deeper into the scratchy wool blankets, which are probably just as effective at collecting dust and despair as they are at keeping you warm. Miraculously, the solace of sleep edges closer, or at least a reluctant truce begins to settle in. But wait, the snoring from a nearby inmate reaches epically thunderous levels, rattling your resolve. You can't help but chuckle at the absurdity of the situation. Is everyone else's plight just a little too ridiculous? Sleep becomes a tantalizing fantasy as you mentally tick off a list of names for the choruses. The third shift snorer, harmony of hunger, or possibly Rattus to the rescue. Meanwhile, you long for a comfy bed, a soft pillow, and a good old duvet. Instead, you find yourself drifting into the land of dreams that are only half-formed pictures of pies and warm baths, luxuries you wouldn't dare criticise outright, but that you could really go for at this moment. You ponder tales of those who have escaped elsewhere and marvelled at their daring adventure as if they'd taken a pit stop to heaven. Just as your body feels ready to surrender, you wonder, what happens when you let go? Could it be that you'll tumble into a deep slumber only to wake, hopefully, freed from this life of drudgery? Or will the workhouse ghosts come to haunt you, reminding you of the people you lost along the way? The dread rises, yet you fight to create a mental image of a life outside this building. But sleep continues to retreat like a shy dance partner, rehearsing its moves just out of your reach. Tonight may have seemed longer than ever, and with every tick of the clock you cling to the hope that maybe, just maybe, tomorrow will hold somewhere a semblance of freedom, if only from the whimsical nightmare that is your workhouse existence. As exhaustion finally loosens its grip, you drift towards sleep. Just as your eyes close, you hear the telltale scuffle of a rat making off with your last scrap of dignity, and that odd notion of a haunting serenade plays in your dreams. Welcome to a sleep that both mocks and ignites the hope of survival, the symphony of the workhouse. Ah, the workhouse, renowned for its joy, laughter, and of course, lice. Now that you've got all the time in the world to ponder life's choices, perhaps you can pick through your hair and read Lice: A Love Story. Because wait, is this a horror movie or a metaphor for survival in the face of irritation? You're not just sporting a new do, but a thriving community of tiny blood-sucking freeloaders who've taken residence in what used to be your luxurious hair. At this point, you're not sure if you should be more offended by the lice, or the fact that they seem to find your existence quite appealing. Ah, to be so popular! Finding lice in your hair is the Victorian version of winning the crappiest prize ever. You whip out your trusty lice comb, a device so thorough it could also serve as medieval torture implement. You try to pretend your hair is merely a lush landscape, and your bloodsuckers are just fellow tenants in this once cosy dwelling. Surprisingly, picking through the strands is a blend of repulsion and strange fascination, like gazing into a circus tent where all the acts have gone terribly, terribly wrong. Each tiny beast you capture and evict from your scalp prompts an unfortunate mixture of relief and a round of philosophical reflection. What mystery of the universe led you to this very moment of itchiness and irritation? But the best part of this mini-exodus from your scalp is your fellow workhouse inmates. You're not alone in this battle against itchy invaders. It's community bonding at its finest. You gather for what can only be called lice show and tell. Imaginary trophies are handed out for the biggest catches of the day, while laughter echoes through your quarters, becoming the only musical accompaniment in the workhouse where entertainment options were somehow thinner than porridge. "I'm proud," you declare, waving your newly liberated louse in the air as if it were an Oscar. "I've named him Scratches." Through this hilariously tragic shared experience, you forge bonds that rival those made in gossip-filled salons of the bourgeoisie, albeit with less fabric and more hair-related anxiety. Conversations flow freely about remedies, boiled onion peels, vinegar washes, and quite possibly invoking the name of a saint. You chuckle at your comrade who has adopted a questionable approach involving hot potatoes and strange incantations, all in the name of making your scalps a sanctuary once more. The laughter flows as each of you offers tales of prior battles with the little monsters, uniting your stories into a tapestry of ridiculous resilience. And let's not forget the ambience, where the scent of unwashed bodies mingles beautifully with the musty odour of damp wool and a hint of despair. Add in a sprinkle of unavoidable humdrum despair, and you've got a recipe for an aromatic witch's brew. that is somehow both comforting and nauseatingly reminiscent of existence from the Victorian era, you lick your thumb and smear it over a particularly stubborn strand in the hopes that maybe, just maybe, the power of your own skin might vanquish the uninvited guests. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Despite your best efforts, the lice seem to flourish in this environment, thriving like whimsical cockroaches at a midnight party. Instead of feeling defeated, you learn to embrace your new reality. After all, if life hands you lice, you might as well turn it into a theme party. And soon enough, you give the little critters whimsical names to lighten the dismal tones of constant scratching. Ah yes, my dear friend Itchy McScratcherson is feeling lively today. You regale your companions with tales of your imaginary lice adventures, inviting everyone to enjoy your hair's newfound status as the hottest club in Workhouse Town. As the workday drags on, the lice remain a constant presence, but instead of fighting them, you shift your strategy. Like prisoners of war, you negotiate for peace. Listen here, my little tormentors, you address your fluctuating friends. I will let you hang around, but if you touch me again, I'm sending you to the poorhouse. With a standing ovation of giggles among your peers, you realise this infectiously silly mindset is the only way to keep you sane amidst the hardships. So, there you are. A lice-laden warrior in a world of bleakness. With every liberated louse, you reclaim a fragment of dignity, a micro-battle won in a greater war against adversity. Your hair is no longer just hair, it's your battleground, a space for rebellion and laughter. And if that's not a tale worth telling, what is? As the night kicks in, you find yourself battling dreams of freedom against the prison of the workhouse. Does the pursuit of prosperity outweigh the pitfalls of the daily grind? Will you ever climb those sturdy walls and break away from this loop in time? As you drift between the realms of slumber and wakefulness, your mind conjures images of rolling green fields, where the only sound is the gentle rustle of the wind through the grass, and not the shrill whistle of the workhouse master echoing in your ears. You can almost taste the sweetness of freshly baked bread, not the sorry excuse of porridge served with an unending side of despair. In the depths of your mind, you envision a life where you aren't forced to rise before dawn, like a stiff-necked rooster on caffeine, where your sweat is not the currency of the working class, but rather the gentle dew of a morning's peaceful labour. But suddenly, the dream takes a dark turn, a gruesome twist worthy of a Victorian melodrama. In the corner of the room swirls a cuckoo clock, but instead of comforting ticks, it grinds out an ominous metal scraping, reminiscent of the chains of the workhouse calling you back to the unyielding reality of your life. A spectral figure, perhaps the ghost of a past inmate, drags a chain through the shadows, his every movement punctuated by panic-stricken whispers of "Don't lose hope." You jolt awake, heart racing, sheets damp from sweat as you contemplate your next move. What if I simply refuse to work tomorrow? Seems like a heroic declaration, until reality crashes back in like an angry tide. You know better than to challenge the workhouse's unyielding grip, not when threats of punishment loom heavier than a leaden sky. You can't help but picture the terrifying consequences, a stint in the bad room, where whispers of despair drift through the cracks of the walls, echoing tales of silenced dreams and broken spirits. Those stories send ice racing down your spine. You glance at the other sleeping figures around you, each person another soldier in the war of survival. They also dream, but what do their dreams consist of? Are they escaping, or are they chasing shadows like the rest of you? You ponder your companions, Mary, with her spirit so bright it could light up a coal mine, always rallying everyone with tales of freedom fighters, and old Mr. Thompson, who talks of grand days where people earned a living with dignity, as if it were yesterday? Could they be the ones to inspire a change? You wonder if the power of collective dreaming could one day galvanize an uprising against the workhouse's tyranny. The clock ticks on, and you feel a jealousy stirring for those dreamers in their slumber. They hold the reins of their narratives, unlike you, chained to thoughts of waking turmoil. What if we banded together, you think? Only half foolish, with the thrill of camaraderie buzzing through the amber lamplight. What if we use our dreams as blueprints for a revolution? That night's fierce longing for freedom turns into daydreams of cooperation, a union that would transform despair into action. Morning breaks like a reluctant prisoner, spilling hazy light into the dark corners of your shared dwelling. You find yourself energized, and whether it was the whispered rebellion or the ominous dreams that haunted your sleep, something stirs within you. A plan begins to form. You will begin to speak with those around you, collect ideas, and turn your miseries into a chorus of solidarity. A chance meeting in the corridor, a shared glance during breakfast, the spark could ignite, catching fire in the hearts of the weary. As you rise from your straw mattress, the determination solidifies within you like concrete. The idea of a seamless escape remains a whimsical flight to catch, but you now know that change does not always require the grand gesture. Sometimes, the smallest of shifts can provoke a tidal wave. As you shuffle off to begin your day's work, it hits you. Every chamber pot you empty, every floor you scrub can't just be labour. This is a rallying cry for all who live in the shadow of the workhouse. Your heart pulses with possibility, sharpened by the duality of your dreams, where night terrors dance with the visions of liberation. Tomorrow will be different, you vow to yourself, knowing that even in the depth of struggle the spirit can soar, and dreams, twisted as they might be, can fuel a future worth fighting for. As the sun begins to rise outside, you join the teeming crowd of inmates, each a potential spark, each with their own dreams, marching together towards the dawn of change. And just like that, morning comes back again with the light's greeting, dawn unceremoniously reminding you that the grind continues. And whether it thrives off drudgery or inspires a passive acceptance of fate, you must survive the workhouse yet again. The air is thick with the scent of damp straw, sweat, and the lingering question of who you are becoming in this gloomy world. Is it worth it to endure this relentless cycle? Your eyes flicker open as the chorus of alarmed roosters welcomes you to the day, only to be met with the same cold stone walls you left in your dreams, walls that seem to close in on your aspirations like a pair of too tight trousers. With a reluctant grumble, you roll out of bed, if you can call it that. It's more like a hastily assembled pile of straw that's previously cradled the hopes and misfortunes of many a soul before you. Dust settles in clouds as your feet hit the floor, and you brace yourself for the day ahead. You shuffle toward the dining hall, still praying today might be the day the porridge doesn't taste like a cardboard box filled with disappointment. Breakfast feels like the appalling sequel in a franchise that's never ending, each morning serving another bowl of mediocre mediocrity that tests your culinary endurance. As you endure yet another round of gruel, you share weary smiles with your fellow inmates, faces marked by exhaustion and resilience. Between bites, you hear snippets of conversations filled with dreams of leaving this place, of breaking free into the uncertain world beyond these walls. Maybe today will be the day we escape, one brave voice whispers, hope glimmering through the morning haze like the last dregs of honey at the bottom of a jar. You nod along because who wouldn't cling to the prospect of freedom, even when it feels as likely as receiving a letter from a long-lost pirate. Breakfast done, and it's time to tackle the day's responsibilities, like joining a poorly organised race to see who can get to the chores first. One moment you're cleaning the sleeping quarters, The next you're battling it out in the laundry room where piles of filthy clothes seem to grow like weeds in a neglected garden. You might as well be trying to drown a mountain with a bucket of water. No sooner do you wipe one corner clean than dust and grime come charging back in, galloping in with a triumphant, "We've returned! Bet you missed us!" It's hard not to feel like Sisyphus at this point, rolling a boulder up a hill only to see it tumble down again. At the end of your laborious tasks, you gather in the common area with your fellow workers, and though the air is thick with the smell of sweat and despair, camaraderie blooms in snippets of laughter and shared stories. You reminisce about the absurdity of life in the workhouse as you contemplate the ins and outs of survival. Why do they keep calling it a workhouse anyway? Why not a house of dreams where we all sit around, singing Kumbaya? You joke. Everyone chuckles, a shared understanding of the futility of hope echoing through the grime. Alas, even as the sun sets, things don't get easier. You settle into bed, another night with your comrades, lying on the same thin straw that absorbs your dreams and tears alike. You talk in hushed tones about your lives before the workhouse, recalling memories of grassy hills and starry skies, where even the hardest labour could feel like an adventure instead of a chore. You swap stories of whimsy that would make even the most tragic tales seem grand. Imagine if someone walked in here with pastries, another one suggests dreamily. They'd be hailed as the bread messiah. But despite your brave banter, you know the truth. Survival is only half the battle. Many nights you lie awake, wondering if this cycle of misery will ever end. As you listen to the muffled snores of those around you, their loyalty to resignation apparent, you struggle with something far heavier. You grapple with your dreams of something better, knowing that each whispered hope is a rebellion against this institution designed to bring you low. Is survival enough? Shouldn't you at least be thriving rather than when the sun comes up? It's merely a reminder to rinse and repeat. Then it hits you. Perhaps thriving is not about escaping these bricks and mortar. Perhaps it's about forging bonds in this bleak sea of humanity, about singing in the darkness until someone remembers what it feels like to be free, even if just for a moment. So, you whisper to your sleeping brothers and sisters, if we can endure this together, we can find joy even among the sorrows of the workhouse. Perhaps that camaraderie is the first step towards truly thriving. Yes, the walls may be cold, the porridge ever dreadful, but possibility flickers like candlelight in this grim world. And perhaps, just perhaps, smiles can be weapons against the chill of despair if you have the courage to wield them. Entering the workhouse meant not only labour, but the constant threat of punishment for misbehaviour, a whimsical term for anything that strayed from the monotonously expected. You can hear the ominous warning bell tolling again, and feel the ice around it freezing, the very thrill of rebellion running through your veins. The atmosphere is tinged with anxiety. A storm of punishment looms just over the horizon, like one of those dark clouds that follows you around in cartoons, perpetually ready to rain misery on your parade. In the workhouse, the unwritten rules are as plentiful as the spots on a rat, and every infraction, no matter how small, seems to have the potential to evoke the judgment of the workhouse master, a figure as feared as he is misunderstood. You may think of a warning as a gentle nudge, perhaps an unpleasant conversation over the nature of expectations. In this world, it's more like having a gigantic rock dropped on your foot for forgetting to say please when passing the butter, which, by the way, is a log of rancid lard masquerading as the best condiment on the menu. Any slip of the tongue or miscalculation with your labour could land you in the bad room, a charmingly euphemistic term for a dark, dank space with no windows, where time is measured only by the number of days you can count on your grimy fingers. But let's take a moment to talk about the unique creativity required to navigate this oppressive realm. Every worker knows the most vital survival skills include perfecting eye rolls, when the master isn't watching, and mastering the ancient art of mumble politics. You learn to speak in low murmurs about the weather or the horrible state of your last meal, avoiding confrontational subjects like escaping or dignity. A well-timed cough or strategically placed yawn can easily deflect attention when the master wanders by with that permanent scowl plastered on his face, as though he were perpetually expected to receive bad news at any moment. When an offence occurs, perhaps a slip of your tongue that sparked an impromptu giggle fest amongst your fellow labourers, the master's response can be swift and merciless. Suddenly you are thrust before him, the embodiment of shame, like a child caught with his fingers in the cookie jar, only the jar is a pitiful bowl of gruel, and the finger-snatching crime is all too serious here. Punishments can vary wildly from extra chores, which could easily turn into a frenzied and exhausting full day of carpentry woes, to more medieval styles of discipline, like a good old-fashioned whipping. Let's just say it's safe to say that stinging bottoms aren't a necessary step in the Raising Good Citizens handbook. Yet somehow, through it all, the spirit of rebellion simmers beneath the surface. For every punishment, it seems like a joke whispers around, "Better keep my head down today. I don't want to give the master a reason to practice his aim." The gossip that spreads amidst the dreary chants of labour is not just about life in the workhouse. It becomes a subtle act of defiance. You'll find yourself bonding with fellow inmates over tales of bumble punishments endured and survived, each misadventure a badge worn proudly against the backdrop of communal suffering. And then there's the linchpin of late-night discussions, a secret that spreads through the workhouse walls, a rumour, the great escape. There's always talk of someone, somewhere who has pulled off a daring escape, their fate a tantalising image for all not-so-innocent dreamers trawling through the dull repetition. The thrill of imagining those daring deeds makes you feel alive, allowing the heart to soar briefly before crashing down to reality when you catch a glimpse of the master's shadow darting past. So, as night falls, when the corridors echo with the loneliness of a few souls keeping a collective vigil over hope, you pride yourself on having survived another day. It's not just about putting in hours for a bowl of gruel or avoiding punishment. It's about crafting a space of resilience and camaraderie. Here, in the suffocating grip of the workhouse, laughter and shared stories become a protest against despair. Sure, your back may ache, and you might bear the scars from a master's hand, but in moments of rebellion against the oppression, you will find not only friendship but a spark of freedom right in the heart of confinement, something the workhouse can never truly snuff out. And so you prepare to face another day, knowing that no clock, no master, and no amount of punishment can silence your spirit that seeks laughter, friends, and perhaps the glimmering hope of something better down the road. Or, at the very least, a crumb of decent bread. As the sun sets, whispers of hope flow through the stagnant air of the workhouse. You find refuge in the tales shared at twilight, cot stories spun with threads of resilience and tenacity that seem to burn brighter than the flickering candles in the otherwise darkened room. This is the one time during the day when the misery lifts ever so slightly, like a stubborn bowler hat at a fancy party, just enough to tease you into believing there's more to life than porridge and chores. Gathered in a huddle, your fellow inhabitants morph into storytellers for a fleeting moment, transforming the workhouse into a makeshift theatre. One woman, Johanna, spins a gripping yarn about a daring escape attempt that involved a ladder made of laundry lines and a bucket of chicken feathers. You laugh, picturing the feathered fiasco as its hopeful architect flapped away across the yard, the workhouse master none the wiser, until he found himself with a face full of paltry dreams. In that instant, the harsh realities of the workhouse melt away, replaced by the absurd drama of life behind its grimy walls. The conversations flow like water, tales take on a life of their own, morphing through retellings. Someone recounts the time that a rat stole a piece of mouldy bread right from a fellow inmate's lap. Bold little beast, you think, admiration mingling with a new desire to raise your own culinary standards to that of the rodent elite. And then there's Harold, a lad whose eyes gleam with mischief as he shares his plans for repurposing old rags into a fashion line, an entirely impractical yet charming idea that would make Marie Antoinette roll in her grave if she were in the market for thrift store chic. As laughter erupts, you feel that familiar tug at your heart, the one that tells you this moment of shared joy won't last. But who needs permanence? The present is a delicacy unto itself. This camaraderie brings a sense of community, even in the bleakest of settings. Words become the threads that weave together the patchy fabric of your existence, creating a tapestry that is at once noble and laughable. You wonder about the world outside. Was there really freedom beyond those iron gates, or were people simply battling the same daily drudgeries, with sunlight and fresh air the only rewards for the effort? Often, amidst the chaos of shared stories, your mind drifts to dreams of a better tomorrow. A long, grassy field without walls would be a grand start. You could stroll without fear of the workhouse master glaring down like a vulture, waiting for even the slightest hint of rebellion. To run with laughter echoing in the sunlight, hand in hand with community rather than forging paths in isolation. You can almost hear the chorus of joy bubbling up from that imagined scene, assaulting your senses like the once hoped-for whiff of homemade chicken soup. It's a delicious distraction, but always, the stark clanging of reality looms like the workhouse bell, just waiting to shatter those tender dreams into shards of hopelessness. When the candles flicker out as they inevitably must, so too must the laughter die down, extinguishing the glow of temporary reprieve. You return to your cot, the weight of the evening dragging on your limbs. The darkness encircles you like an unwelcome hand. You think about your own story. Has it been told yet? Or will it remain buried beneath the same tattered sheets that swallow your daily grind? Will anyone ever know of your quiet rebellion against the mundane? The moments you chose humour over despair, like tossing a rubber chicken at the workhouse master instead of daisies. You chuckle softly at the absurdity of your thoughts. No, the workhouse is no stage, but in this darkness, every participant becomes the lead actor of their own little drama. As sleep gathers around you like a thick smoke, your mind flutters, perhaps not too far from the surface reality. Tomorrow will be filled with more chores, yet the tales shared tonight linger like the smell of freshly baked bread that you once yearned for, a scent you'll chase in your dreams, imagining every hope and escape until dawn tips the dark with welcome light, and you must rise once more to face the relentless grind. But tonight is still yours, a brief sanctuary stitched together by the stories you share. You cling to those whispers, that sweet, potent magic found in each other's laughter, and let them cradle you into a delicate sleep, painting a world where not all hope is lost, even in the grim shadow of a Victorian workhouse. As the days drag on, the question arises, is this workhouse your new family, or are you simply renting a plot in history's least exciting novel? More importantly, would it ever be canonized? You ponder these questions as the walls seem to shake in laughter at every pitiful contemplation. Does any of this even matter when the only currency you're dealing with is the rawness of your aching back and the desperate longing for a crumb of dignity? Yet here you are, night after night, day after day, grunting your way through the routines like a poorly oiled cog in a rusty machine that's been grinding for centuries, The collective consciousness of the other residents swirls through your mind like a spicy stew, simultaneously comforting and nauseating. You share meals, chores, and more than a few bemusing glances with those around you, yet you can't shake the feeling that you're all part of some unholy sitcom. Welcome to the workhouse, the master's voice echoes in your ears. Here you'll learn valuable life skills, like how to serve a tepid porridge and dodge the rats. The humour is sharp, the camaraderie just as much a coping mechanism as it is an attempt to make this life semi-bearable. You begin to contemplate who might end up telling the tale of the workhouse. Will it be buried in the footnotes of history, glossed over in the next textbook, or will it be embellished into a heroic epic, with you as the harried protagonist who rises up against the oppressive regime of tinted oatmeal and poor air circulation? You chuckle to yourself. Imagine it. The Great Porridge Rebellion could be a blockbuster novel, if only someone would put ink to page. Thus far, each day melds into the next, a cycle you're all too familiar with, like a stale loaf of bread that's been passed around long enough to know better. You trudge through the same tired tasks, wondering if someone might eventually develop a heartwarming movie franchise out of this labour of drudgery. Perhaps an all-star cast, complete with a plucky heroine who always finds the last bit of sugar hidden beneath the hearth. But wait, what if the workhouse isn't just a dreary prison of soul-crushing tasks? Maybe it's a hotbed of hidden talent poised to explode onto the literary scene. You imagine a secret underground network forming over bowls of gruel every night. Writers scribbling their thoughts on scraps of parchment. Poets penning verses to the smell of cabbage boiling in the adjacently unpleasant kitchen. Throughout grueling work hours, ideas flicker like candle flames in the back of your mind. You could make a change, however small it may seem. Perhaps you can inspire someone else in your shoes, share in your plight, become a voice amidst the bustle of this grim reality. Isn't it noble to suffer together? Isn't there solace in shared misery? Skewered by the ignoble charms of life, you all lean into it, laughing at those rusty cogs clinking together as you march stiffly through the day like an impromptu brigade of the obliviously oppressed. Speaking of laughter, it seems to pop up at the unlikeliest of places. The laundress caught with her skirt swirling in the washroom closet, or the scullery maid staring down a mysterious sausage. Both feature flawless comedic timing, lest you forget the inexplicable wardrobe malfunction that resulted in the great Pans on Heads episode. Did it lead to any grand social change? No. But giggles echoed through damp corridors as each unfortunate soul tried not to be the one with debasing decorum. This workhouse is an odd paradox, a breeding ground for life lessons, social observation, and the most exasperating friendships imaginable. You slowly begin to realise that it's not merely about survival, it's about the essence of your humanity gradually taking form within the confines of these walls. Amid the rough textures of work and suffering, stretches of laughter bounce off the cold stone floors like echoes of hope. The workhouse may take away your comfort and dreams, but it refuses to snatch away your spirit or tear the fabric of camaraderie that binds you to your fellow residents. At the end of a grueling day, as you climb beneath yet another scratchy blanket, thoughts of resilience bloom in your mind. Quiet hope festers in the dark corners of your diminished aspirations. Could it be that, against all odds, even despair has its silver lining? You close your eyes, drifting into sleep, visions of stories yet to be told swirling behind your eyelids, wondering if history would catch up to this moment, or if it all would simply slip into the depths of dust and echoes. Whatever the outcome, at least you'd know that in your heart, you'd tried, truly tried. to compose something worthy out of the legacy left behind in this workhouse money pit of existence. With whispers growing louder, a new energy sparks. Rumours of revolution burgeon through your fellow workmates. Will you all ever gather enough courage to stand against the system, or will it fade like mist with the first light of day? The air is thick with anticipation, a collective sigh for change that nobody knows how to breathe into life. As you wash the dishware from the last meal, the clinking sounds echo in a strangely musical way, like a symphony of resistance building up beneath the clatter of routine. You exchange furtive glances over the swirling haze of steam rising from the cauldron of slippery porridge boiling in the kitchen. It feels electrifying, even if mildly nauseating. You can't help but imagine what would happen if the very walls of the workhouse shattered under the weight of daring hearts. The kitchen is a cauldron, not just for porridge, but for ideas, some slightly burnt and others half-cooked. Each time the whistle blows for mealtime, threads of defiance stretch among you and your fellows. You listen intently to a good-humoured bloke named Tim, who proposes a foolhardy idea of a workhouse Olympics. Imagine the thrill! Racing to the outhouse first, slopping porridge down each other's backs. Now that could spark a bit of joy amid the relentless drudgery. You chuckle quietly, yet secretly dream of climbing the ladder all the way up to the master's quarters to demand better conditions instead of racing one another to the nearest bucket. Then there's Margaret, a woman with determination sharper than a newly honed sickle. Her speeches about labour rights ring out louder than the clack of wooden shoes on stone floors. "We are the backbone of this place," she declares one dreary afternoon as you sweep up the remnants of another lacklustre dinner. "Without us, this place falls apart. We should demand to be treated like human beings." The air pulsates with her words, much like a drumbeat beckoning to the forgotten warrior within. You can't help but feel your heart race. When was the last time you truly believed in your worth beyond just being an extra in this tragic play? On a break, a hushed huddle erupts near the laundry rooms. You catch snippets of chatter about how a few courageous souls are spreading the seeds of dissent beyond these rickety walls. A movement, they say. But as you lean closer, the risks echo just as loud, each hastily shared thought dripping with the trepidation of punishment, or worse, banishment from the only place you've known, a twisted comfort zone. You can feel the skepticism bubbling within, especially when you remember the last poor wretch who dared to stand against the workhouse master's orders, taught a lesson more merciless than a washboard on a sore back. As dust settles over the humdrum of unfinished tasks, the camaraderie grows thicker, the sullen atmosphere split by streaks of mischief and defiance. Motivation lifts spirits higher than the moon, twinkling mischievously at the piteous sight of humanity treading water amongst filth. In the distance, does that caw from a hawk feel like freedom? The thought brings warmth to your chest. In these moments of solidarity, it becomes apparent that the only true rebellion against the banalities of workhouse life is each tiny step taken towards the glimmer of hope and the notion of something better. Yet reality is a brutal teacher, raining on your burgeoning rebellion parade. What if change is just a beautifully painted facade decorating a crumbling wall? Fear creeps in like the chill of a damp spring morning, reminding everyone of the risk involved in stirring the pot. After all, the workhouse has its rules, and the fear of punishment rests heavily on more than just the shoulders of the starving. And who wouldn't prefer an extra serving of porridge rather than risk it all for a dream grounded in uncertainty? But as you glance at the empty porridge pots and forsaken straw beds, the thought lingers like a half-forgotten tune. Perhaps it's time to carve out an identity beyond the workhouse parable. It'd be foolish to believe change would come without a cost. Yet there's this beautiful hope fluttering in a corner of the soul. Gathering every ounce of courage, you imagine uniting the workhouse, against the unyielding tide of oppressive routine? Would it be enough to stir a revolution, or would it end in a round of gruel for your efforts? The tension thickens, and as sleep tries to claim you, the blazing embers of rebellion smoulder brightly until they flare, igniting a longing for change that would sweep through the corridors like an invigorating wind. This is the sound of possibility surfacing in the workhouse. It's the tremor of unease that comes with contemplating freedom. Tonight, as everyone else dreams of survival, you dream of becoming a force, hoping for a day when this house finally stands as a monument to the struggle, and not merely a nondescript pit of despair. And as you drift off to sleep, that tumultuous longing bites at your insides. You're ready for more than just survival. You ache for significance, feeling the weight of rebellion start to gather into a storm inside you, one that may yet shake these walls and transform the whispers of change into true authenticity. After weeks of enduring the drudgery, the real question looms: what's your legacy? You might just be at the heart of a change waiting to happen. The tales of struggle morph into chants of rebellion, and suddenly it all seems worth it, as those ragged breaths of resilience take hold of the future. You gather with your fellow workers in the dim evening light, faces etched with hardship but glowing with an undeniable spark of defiance. It's as if each shared story of woe ignites a tiny flame, flickering into something resembling hope. You can almost hear the haunting echoes of past workers who dared to dream for something better, sitting in the corner and nodding sagely, probably still wondering when someone would finally bring them a proper meal. You glance around and there's Farmer Pat in the corner, his eyes bright with the kind of revolutionary spirit that, quite frankly, would shock the best of the bourgeoisie. "You know," he says, "if we just pooled our resources, we wouldn't have to eat this gruel every single day." Everyone chuckles at the absurdity of it all. If only a fund existed for new recipes penned by a secret chef who was nothing short of genius. But deep down, Farmer Pat's words reveal that maybe, just maybe, there's a chance to change the status quo. Who knew that such wisdom could arise from a man whose boots have long been the colour of barn muck? As days turn into weeks, you can sense a blend of camaraderie and shared purpose brewing amongst the workhouse denizens. What started as mere survival has morphed into a communal longing for dignity. Now, side by side with your fellow inhabitants, you begin discussing fiery topics while scrubbing the floors. No easy feat when your hands are working themselves into defeat already. You exchange ideas about how the workhouse system entraps you all in a cycle of poverty and despair. "A day might come," you declare, your voice barely louder than a whisper above the sound of shuffling feet, "when we can stand together and demand better from these charitable gentlemen. People who stroll in here in fancy coats and waistcoats looking gratified by our woes." The more you talk, the more you begin to realise that your unity has the power to create real change. Just like a well-greased cog, your collective voices could rattle the very foundations of this establishment. The air feels thick with ideas, some wild and daring, others tinged with fear and uncertainty. But isn't that the essence of rebellion? A melting pot of hope, the taste of freedom on everyone's tongue, and the realization that together you form a force that could, strangely enough, stand up against the well-fed, well-dressed gentlemen who might mistake your struggles for entertainment. Your days of hardship can always be balanced by the anecdotes shared during the evening's communal wash-up. By the end of each talk, hearts warm, though hands still shivering from the icy water, everyone slowly retreats, resigned to the mundane but emboldened by dreams of brighter tomorrows. And just as the last echoes of chatter fade, you fall victim to sleepless nights filled with visions of well-meaning cruelty. What you'll say when standing face to face with the powers that be, Yet the passion and ambition keep swirling in your mind, even if sleep continues to elude you. You think of all the small actions you could take to subvert the system, from hiding a loaf of bread under the floorboards to possibly staging spontaneous protest songs during soup time. Yes, the spark of rebellion flourishes from the heart of your workhouse, throbbing just below the surface like an untamed storm waiting for the right moment to unleash fury on every overstuffed waistcoat. The grit of your existence becomes a kind of armour against apathy. Together with your comrades, you feel as if you could actually infiltrate the very tapestry of the workhouse, the same tapestry that had knit your burdens into fabric day after day. Look, you might whisper with a wink to Rosa, who has become your partner in crime. If we have nothing else, we've got this sneaky pride that comes from refusing to accept anyone else's definition of our worth. As you prepare for another sunrise roused by the unwelcome sound of the morning bell, you can't help but smile. You've been trudging through the muck, yes, but today feels a little different. Today you're not just trying to survive, you're part of a legacy that will ripple through the workhouse walls, echo into the streets, and maybe, even if only for a moment, rattle the bones of the ruling class. After all, you're part of an army ready to rise, rewrite history, and ensure, or at least dream, that the next generation will remember you not simply as a workhouse resident, but as a cornerstone of the revolution. Who knows? Maybe the future will turn out to be a culinary paradise, one filled with buttery bread and proper meals when no one remembers what it feels like to get a bowl of porridge for breakfast. Now that's a legacy worth fighting for. As the day finally comes to a close, it becomes evident that the workhouse may not be the final destination. With a rush of courage, you realise that through laughter, labour, and an unquenchable will to escape, the lessons learned may just morph into the foundation of a better tomorrow, or at least a better porridge recipe. You sit around the dimly lit common area, the air thick with the scent of day-old gruel and shared secrets. The flickering candlelight illuminates the weary faces of your companions, but within those sunken cheeks and tired eyes, you spot a spark of resilience, a glint that says, "We might not have much, but what we do have is each other." You start to notice how the simple act of camaraderie can lift the spirits higher than the finest English tea. There's Edna, who spins tales of freedom like a master storyteller. She describes green fields under blue skies, patches of sun where laughter dances unencumbered by the weight of the workhouse. You close your eyes and can almost smell the grass. Can you believe it? A life outside of these prison-like walls. Edna's dreams fuel your imagination, and for the moment, the dreary workhouse slips away like a faint echo of yesterday's misery. But reality kicks in. What's required now is more than just camaraderie and flavourless pottage talk. It demands bravery, the kind that grates like nails against a chalkboard. Decisions begin to form in your mind like the lingering taste of last night's unappetising stew. What if you took the plunge? What if you began to organise a plan? A rebellion so subtle it could bloom beneath the master's nose without triggering a larger calamity? It sounds awfully romantic, doesn't it? But it's also terrifying. As the days progress, whispers of resistance form like clouds gathering for a summer storm. You start exchanging furtive glances with your companions as you nod knowingly at one another. Little affirmations that you've all caught the scent of change. We can't keep living inside this workhouse. It's become a purgatory of sorts. A reminder that life can be Sisyphean, with breadcrumbs for dinner and glimmers of hope dashed time and again. You converse in hushed tones, brainstorming strategies, secretly picking away at the malleable madness of life in the workhouse. The air crackles with the electricity of courage, propelling the night forward. You begin to ponder how to make use of your collective creativity. The The absurdity of the workhouse seems to lend itself to an even crazier idea. What if you staged a play? Yes, a farcical performance that pokes fun at the tyrannical centre of it all, the workhouse master. Laughter becomes a tool, a weapon to dismantle the walls closing in on you. Suddenly the notion of absurd theatre, a mix of comedy and sincerity, takes root deep in the hearts of you and your friends. It's as if a curtain has been pulled back, and there lies your escape route. Every evening after labour you gather in, secret, working out scenes that mirror the absurdity of your reality. The master becomes a caricature to be mocked, a bumbling fool instead of a terrifying overseer. And more importantly, this isn't just about laughs. It's also a rallying cry, a tapestry of shared experience embroidered with threads of rebellion. As the rehearsal spark smiles, the workhouse gets a taste of something potent, levity. You notice that as laughter fills the cramped space, even the rats seem quieter, perhaps in awe of your bravado. As the day of your performance approaches, your heart pounds like a war drum. The plan takes shape, a secret workhouse theatrical tucked behind the wooden beams of your dreary dwelling. You can already imagine the onlookers, other inmates, hopeless souls seeking momentary joy amongst the monotony. Would the master even notice? Would he scoff or join in on the fun? It's thrilling to think about. And when the fateful night arrives, every participant puts on their makeshift costumes, more artfully scratched together than a toddler's art project. The moment arrives, the atmosphere is electric. Performance unfolds like a long-forgotten story coming back to life. Laughter erupts, jabs are thrown, and for the first time in what feels like forever, the workhouse fades into the background. It's a celebration of humanity, a flicker of hope against the drudgery of daily life. When the applause settles, you realise something transformative has occurred. For just a moment you escape the confines of your reality. As heads turn toward you, smiles paint the faces of fellow workers, and you know you've reignited that tiny spark of courage. The workhouse is still there, yes, but now it feels less like a prison and more like a stepping stone, a place where resilience transforms into a brighter tomorrow. Because within those walls you formed not just a community, but a united front, a legacy that will ripple into eternity, igniting the flames of change long after the final curtain falls. So, as you crawl back into your makeshift mattress, exhaustion clings to you like wet laundry, but there's something new, a deep-seated belief that you can persist, push forward, and even laugh through the strife. You drift off, dreaming not of porridge but of freedom, a world just beyond the workhouse gates where the grass is always greener, laughter echoes, and the spirit of rebellion thrives under the endless sky.